morning, or no, I guess it's not morning. Afternoon. Are we doing any opening? I guess not, Kevin. If you're standing back there, you're expecting me to do the opening?
I could introduce you, but
All right. I think you guys know who Brian Hughes is, Central Precinct Commander. So when the hardballs come, that's why I've got him here to just pass off. So, all right, we ready?
Can you take half a step that way when you do? Oh, perfect.
anybody not ready? We're good. Okay. All right. So go ahead, Chief. Whenever you're ready.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us here this afternoon. I just want to take a few minutes, be available to answer questions. A lot going on in the public safety space, particularly around immigration, both here in Portland as well as what we're seeing nationally and particularly in Los Angeles. I want Portlanders to know that in the Police Bureau, we continue to be committed to our role in protecting the rights of all Portlanders. We haven't varied from that. We are in compliance with both state law as well as city policy, as well as the Portland Police Bureau policy. We do not engage in immigration enforcement, and we have been in contact with several of our immigrant communities, even over the last 24 to 48 hours, to assure them of that. There was a video that was circulated on social media on, I believe, Sunday, demonstrating what appeared to be officers supporting or participating down at the ICE facility. After a lot of back and forth learning from both Commander Hughes as well as our federal partners, we did in fact have a transport van that showed up at the facility. It was in the early morning hours after operations had ceased. There was a small crowd of demonstrators that had been out there throughout the evening. The driveway had become barricaded, and the employees of the van was empty of any detainees. It was simply had 2 or 3 employees. I'm not sure which, maybe 2. We can get you a number, but they needed to get the van into the building so they could get their keys and go home in their personal vehicles. And they called 911 and asked for assistance, and we were there. We engaged. The officers have a relationship. They know many of the demonstrators who have been in attendance down at the facility, because there have been a number of peaceful protests down there over the course of the last several weeks. We felt to de-escalate the situation, provide the fastest way to clarify things. The officers took it upon themselves, after consulting with Central Precinct leadership, to go ahead and clear the obstructions from the driveway, allow the van to park, and then to leave. This is an unusual step. We traditionally do not clear the driveway. In fact, last night there was more debris put in the driveway, and we did not take any action there. I've been in touch with our federal partners. There was a lack of communication between us and the Federal Protective Service during those early morning hours. We've rectified that with some contacts and some phone numbers. But we did take that initial step on Saturday night, Sunday morning, which I am in agreement with. I believe it was an appropriate action by our members to de-escalate a potentially tense situation and to get the empty van into the building so that those employees could go home as any other employee in the city of Portland should be allowed to go home. Going forward, as I said, we will not be clearing stuff from the driveway of the facility, and also we will not be engaging with any kind of perceived or actual support of vans or transports or anything of that nature, and we're making that clear to our members as well as to our federal partners, and they are in agreement with that. They do not want to put us in a position, and they understand the confusion. I apologize to the community for that, and you know, we intend to clear up some of those lines of communication going forward. But I do respect the decision that was made. It really, over the last 24 to 48 hours since that time period, we have made a couple of arrests down there for ongoing vandalism. Those were done with limited use of force, and we also are, you know, reminding people that we are not supportive of occupying the quote-unquote ICE facility as we've seen in the past. So there's been some attempts on the east side of the building, which we've been working with demonstrators to try and encourage them to find another way to express their opinions and beliefs. Finally, I would say that I have been in regular contact with the mayor, with the council offices. I appreciate their engagement, their concern, as well as their support. We are also working closely with the governor, the attorney general. The state of Oregon is very united in our belief and understanding and values around immigration and protecting the rights of all Portlanders, and that has not changed since we began this conversation, and I intend to keep that top of mind going forward. Questions, or did I answer everything?
Fresh off of the 2020 elections that we all had to deal with in those protests, what do you want the public to know about how you guys are going to do things differently than you did before?
Well, we have made great strides since 2020. We have really taken a hard look at many different aspects of how we manage crowds. And when I say manage crowds, as I said to counselors this morning, I don't see it as the police managing the crowd. I see this as Portland managing its own behavior. We have had a number of demonstrations since the first of the year, some totaling in the several thousands. We expect there to be a large-scale event on Saturday, the 14th. And I couldn't be more pleased or encouraged by the way that Portlanders are showing up and expressing their First Amendment rights and not engaging in violence, not engaging in vandalism. That still is not an acceptable way to express our First Amendment rights. We need to be able to convey to all Portlanders that Portland is a safe city where you can participate. We have taken steps as an independent review that was done, and we've adopted many of those recommendations. Our dialogue liaison officers are having great success in coordinating and reaching out to organizers. They did try to engage the last few nights and were rebuffed at those attempts. We don't force ourselves on people, but if we can participate with them to help facilitate safe events. We're training more frequently. We are working closely with our training division and national standards. And we also, as you may remember, are doing things on an international level. We brought in a subject matter expert from London. We have actually taught in London. We are looking at best practices around the United States and around the country. And we are much better prepared organizationally to respond. But my hope and belief is that we will not see a repeat of the events that we saw in 20 and 21.
Chief, in 2018, we had Occupy all the way down there for 5 weeks. I talked to the protesters down there today who are setting up an encampment, encouraging others to come down. They say they are going to be there for the long haul. What's the plan? Are you going to do anything or let them occupy for the next several weeks?
Yeah, we will not be allowing them to occupy or set up. I haven't obviously been down there to see it myself personally, but our position remains the same, that, we are not going to allow for things to get entrenched, and there are only negatives that come from that. Becomes much more dangerous for both community as well as for law enforcement. We know that ultimately it will need to be resolved, and when that happens, there's a certainly increased amount of risk. That particular area, referring to the east side of the building, is very complex. There's multiple jurisdictions in that area. City of Portland, there's a private trolley line. There may be don't quote me on this, might be a TriMet piece or another piece. So it's a very complex area. It's a very poor location to pick in terms of wanting to take that kind of direct action, because there are many different competing views on that. And Portland Police has to continue to remain neutral in our approach. We have to be able to work closely with, whether it be our federal law enforcement partners, local agencies, private entities, businesses, etc. We are really trying to manage the needs and desires of all Portlanders. So we will not be permitting any kind of an Occupy type repeat of 2018.
There's a lot of video and images coming out of Los Angeles right now, and as things heat up federally, oftentimes we've seen that replicated in the city. There's multiple events planned in Portland, one in Vancouver today. Do you guys have the resources to handle that, and what do you think about how things are heating up?
Yeah, well, I'm very concerned, much like all of you. I pay very close attention to this. I am dependent upon my news sources, similar to you, but I have reached out to our local federal partners, both here and in Seattle. I am in touch with the Major City Chiefs Association. We are sharing information. I believe that we're going to have some opportunity to talk tomorrow, specifically with Chief McDonald and Sheriff Luna down in LA to hopefully get a perspective. We've seen this script. I would just appeal to Portlanders. We've seen this script. We know the harm that comes from those kind of interactions. And so far, in my tenure, we've been able to not have this be about the police. This is about our concerns, and it's about our community, it's about our rights. All of that we are in agreement upon. But when this becomes antagonistic and violent, I have rarely seen in my career, and really throughout our nation's history, a time where successful change has come as a result of violence. Typically, successful change comes when people come together and really exercise their voice, and we have plenty of examples of that. But when it becomes acts of violence, then that is when we begin to see the breakdown. So I am hopeful that our behavior will continue to demonstrate to the country as well as to the region and the state that we are able to manage this. I cannot speak for the federal government. I do not know the intent of the president or any of his federal resources, but I can tell you the federal partners I am talking to, they support my point of view. They want to see Portland be able to manage Portland.
Chief, it's described in the first incident from Saturday evening going to Sunday morning that, a contractor called 911 and then command staff made the decision to intervene. If you were Commander Hughes, could give some sort of timeline about when that call was made and then when command staff ultimately made that.
Can you do that, Commander Hughes?
I sure can.
All right.
Yes. Good afternoon, everybody. It's Brian Hughes, Hughes. Timeline with regard to the activities that occurred Saturday night into Sunday morning. At around 11:09 p.m., we received calls from citizens down in the area about noise occurring, banging on signs. And then at 11:54 p.m., 2 area residents came to an officer that was on scene to complain about the noise. At 12:43 a.m., a contractor called the Bureau of Emergency Communications to complain that they were unable to get their van into the ICE facility. That resulted in a dispatch making a notation into the call, alerting the officers that were on the call that the driver of the van needed to park the van and get their personal vehicles and go home, as the chief mentioned. The on-scene incident commander, which was a night shift sergeant for the Portland Police Bureau, contacted his command, including myself and Captain Jones, and we briefed a plan on how to resolve the incident peacefully. At 1:32 a.m., with enough resources in place, officers were able to clear the driveway of debris. They entered onto the driveway by about 20 to 30 feet. It's pretty clear in the video. And for a very brief period of time, removed the debris from the driveway. By 1:51 a.m., officers were clear of the ICE area.
And I guess, Chief or Commander Hughes, I'm not trying to throw you into an either-or situation, but...
Oh, come on, Zaheem. I mean, that's what this is all about.
But I'm imagining maybe the conversation would have been different if the transport van wasn't empty.
Correct. Certainly top of mind for me, but I want to be clear going forward that the officers used their discretion and the command used their discretion on Saturday night, Sunday morning. I support that decision making, but we will not be doing that going forward. We will make sure that the lines of communication between us and the contractor and FPS, and that's really where the breakdown occurred, was we were working off of partial information, and I'm confident we've clarified now that point.
Was the city attorney's office consulted at all in this process, and can you speak to, how you would talk to folks about this being an instance where you have this state law that says do not assist? What would you tell the folks that this is a good opportunity for that discretion where you did assist?
I'm going to go out on a limb and say you didn't call the city attorney at 2 in the morning? Or, okay, so no, the city attorney's office was not consulted on this particular decision. Of course, we work closely with the city attorney's office, on a regular basis around this. Portland Police Bureau is trying to walk a very fine line, and I understand that, and it is not a perfectly straight line. It is one that is constantly shifting underneath our feet. The reality is that this effort around immigration is happening. It's not something that's we can deny. It's happening. As my friend likes to say, life is in session. This is going on, and we are being called upon to show up in that space in some way. And I am very clear and very certain that I understand the rules of engagement as they relate to immigration and immigration enforcement and the role of the Portland Police Bureau in that. And I've also said since the beginning that we are going to continue to be engaged with our federal partners. This is not a time for us to pull away. This is not a time for us to be separate. in terms of what has been the best interest of Portlanders. Because as we are seeing play out in LA, as we have seen play out historically here in the city of Portland, that once that separation occurs and there's that breakdown of conversation and dialogue, then we see more harm. Can I promise you that won't happen anyway? No. But the events on Sunday morning, the specific events on Sunday morning, I do not see as an assist. I see it as an effort to de-escalate a situation, to bring it to a safe conclusion for everybody involved. But it is a good reminder for us on the importance of making sure that our policies and procedures are in place. I think we're going to see more of this. We're going to be challenged more, and I welcome, the community input, as well as, like I said, the mayor and the council and I regularly talking, as well as our community leaders, about what is the best approach forward.
You got two things going on today. You got the ICE occupation, and you also have this convention center protest. Do you guys have enough resources? Where are you focusing the bulk of your resources? Where do you think there will be more activity?
Well, we're definitely making the Bureau sweat, as the mayor likes to say. This is a stretch for us and will continue to be a stretch. We've had the conversation about resources extensively over the last few years. I am proud of the way that the Bureau is demonstrating a high level of flexibility, and we are constantly evaluating, moving resources around, making sure that we can address high priority concerns and calls for service, continue to do investigations, and mitigate some of these public order events. I mean, right now, as I sit here today, I feel confident that we are doing that, and we are doing that well. We are coming off a very intensive 2 weeks in general with the Rose Festival. This is a really all hands on deck season for us. We tend to like to sort of take a breath at the end of the Rose Festival because there is a lot of asks of our services and participation. I was at the parades, both Starlight and the Grand Floral, et cetera. We have a lot of other things that have been happening. But, Portland Police Bureau is resilient, and I've also been in very close contact with the Oregon State Police. And Superintendent and I spoke today. I know the governor has offered their assistance at any time, so I'm comfortable that if we feel like we're wearing thin or we don't have what we need, that I can pick up the phone and, as they have demonstrated in the past, will partner with us to provide that support that we need.
At the moment, is it convention center or is it?
I'm not going to speak specifics about tactics or operations. That's I defer that to the incident commanders to make, what's the best use of the resources and the folks we have, and then the contingency plans that they put in place.
In terms of what you see being bigger, though?
I don't have a comment on that.
Chief, I just want to raise one thing that you put out earlier this year, a letter and a Q&A that lists out where police might help them, may or may not help immigration.
Mhm.
There's like a paragraph in here that talks about, officers are authorized to respond to emergency calls for cover assistance, to have a code 3 cover injured officer, shots fired, specifically those requests from ICE, CBP, or I guess you called this an unusual step. Is this policy kind of written here what you're going to follow moving forward, or?
Yes, I mean, I still stand behind that policy decision, but, the world of policing is very fluid. We have to be able to empower our people to make decisions. I mean, it's 1:30 in the morning on a Sunday. It's complicated. There's a lot of competing interests, and to the best of their ability, they're trying to make what they see as the best decision going forward. And I believe parking an empty van back in the facility so that two employees can get their personal vehicles and go home versus trying to have the van do that themselves, engaging with protesters and whatever that outcome may or may not be. But I readily admit that it is unusual. It's certainly not life-threatening in that particular case as outlined in there. So that policy remains, but we cannot be static. I mean, one of the areas where we struggle, both in policing but also in our relationship with one another, is when we are so bound to a certain set of beliefs that we are not able to see the competing truths that exist. Two things can be true at the same time. And it's in that dissonance where we, I think, come together, where we grow, where we learn, where we get better, where we get more effective. But if we just stand on one side or stand on the other and point fingers or blame or not look for ways to bring us together, I think that's where the harm occurs. And so, I think those people, those officers, used a way to manage that dissidence in a safe way, and then we're done with it. I think we're good.
If you could say one thing to both the people that are down there demonstrating as well as the people of Portland, they're two different groups. What would you want
Right.
to say to them?
Right. I'm not sure that they're two different groups, but I would speak to any Portlander that has a passion and a belief around this issue or any other issue, that you live in a city that welcomes this dissent, that welcomes the opportunity to express disagreement, even with your leaders, whether they be your direct leaders or your national leaders. We have a long, proud history of that, and we welcome that. But I am constantly reminding us that, there is no room for violence, there is no room for vandalism, and those actions will need to be addressed, and they will either be addressed in the moment or potentially addressed later. I'm in alignment with this with the mayor, with the governor, with the district attorney, with the sheriff, and many of our civic leaders. Folks, my concern is that if we get distracted, we're going to actually lose the ability to have the conversation about what's really happening. Right now in Los Angeles, nobody's talking about immigration. Right now, everybody in Los Angeles is talking about the federal government. They're talking about the National Guard. They're talking about fights with the police. They're talking about riots. They're talking about arrests. They're not talking about immigration. And I would argue that some of this was lost in 20 and 21, where the message was lost. What has changed? What is better today for Black Lives Matters and others today because of our work in 20 and 21? It's limited. There has been some growth and some change, but what is Portland known for? Portland is known for the anarchy and the destruction that occurred, and we continue to battle that today. And now Los Angeles is facing the same challenge. I understand that Portlanders are angry. I think there's absolutely an appropriate place for anger. I have certainly expressed my own anger and frustration over a variety of challenges in my lifetime. But I rarely make good decisions when I'm angry. And what I'm asking Portlanders to do is to find a way to express that dissent, to be able to come together and message, whether it's to the police chief, whether it's to the mayor, whether it's to the governor, whether it's to the president, their concerns, and then understand that the system is working to try and support that. We see that with the governor. We see that with the attorney general, the lawsuits. You saw it in the mayor's statement today, their willingness to take the government to court if they overreach. It's not as if we are passive in our approach, but I do have great concern that we will overstep and cause more harm if we degrade to a level of violence and vandalism.
Do you think that the National Guard in Los Angeles is justified being there?
I don't have enough information to know the circumstances in Los Angeles and whether the Guard is necessary or not. I do know that, once again, I have heard from several of our regional partners. We have MOUs in place throughout Multnomah County with our law enforcement partners. We have strong relationships with our partners in the Tri-County area and the state police. I'm comfortable that should we have challenges on that level, that we will be able to have the resources we need to deal with it through those relationships, but let's hope that's not the case. All right? Thank you very much. What?
I think we're good.
All right,
Yeah,
thanks.
You gotta get to your next thing.
All right. Thanks, guys. Be good.
Good question.